welcome everybody. All right, we're quite a lot of people, so thank you all for coming out. Today I'm going to give you a presentation about UI libraries and how to use CI/CD to publish it automatically when we just say git push, right? Because we're developers, we're lazy, we don't want to update the version number, publish it, put it into the container registry, etc. So first of all, who am I? I'm Rodney Wormsbecher. I'm 36 years old. I work at Ordina in the Netherlands, and I'm a software engineer. And that's all I'm going to say because the time is pretty tight for this presentation. So our agenda, the first thing what we're going to do, we're going to understand why we might need something like Storybook. We're going to understand some Storybook concepts. We're going to publish and consume a package. We're going to do some build automation with GitHub and GitHub Actions. And we're going to Dockerize it and put it to Azure. And that's a lot, so let's get started. So the first thing, why we actually might need to use... OK. So the first thing, why we actually might need to use a UI library. So imagine we have two products, and each product has several applications. For example, a B2B part and a business-to-consumer part. Now, both of them want to use the same styling and the same look and feel, but they use different versions of buttons, of headers, and everything else that's inside of their UI. So if we take a look at here, the first application, we actually have a button version 1.16. And the next one has a button 1.3, and the next one 6.4. So they're totally out of sync. And we can't really say like the attributes that we can input in the button in application 1, we can't say that it's also possible for application number 3. So to solve this problem, we might use something like a UI library. For example, if you use a mono repository, you can say, I have a UI library project. That's why I put all the components in, and I use them within each project. But for example, my colleague over here, he's going to have a deadline tomorrow. And they're going to push it to production. And this other team over here on this side, they say like, yeah, but we need to have like some extra attributes or some different kind of rendering attached to our button. So we are going to update it today. And he's like, no, don't do that. I have production tomorrow. Don't do that. It's going to be really hard. So this really brings some complexity with it. Some of the things right now, if we would use a mono repository, we have complex building pipelines. For example, you have several folders in there with applications, and you would need to set up your CI/CD to actually publish that package. The next part is everybody must use the latest version. If somebody updates it, all the other teams will also need to update to the latest version. And we have no documentation. Now, this one is arbitrary. This is developer experience, which some companies think is very important, and some companies like, we don't care, like, just get the thing done, right? So wouldn't it be great if we have a UI library that we can just publish to NPM, and we can update it whenever we want? For example, like Bootstrap or Google Material or something like that. For everybody who comes in, just get a seat and make yourself at home, feel comfortable. So what we are going to do today, and it's quite a lot, the first part is our developer experience. We're going to use Storybook together with React, Jest, and later we'll set up Docker. Once we have that in place, we can actually use pipelines to publish a package to NPM and then consume it. At the same time, we also want, when the build gets started, that we Dockerize it and put it to a Docker container registry. In my case, it will be Azure. But it could be Docker Hub, no problem. So, Storybook. Let's see. Who has ever used Storybook here? Raise your hand. Oh, that's really a lot. Like, I've never had that before. All right. So I'm first going to go through a small demo. And I made this demo for a bank in the Netherlands. I'm not allowed to call any names. But if you're Dutch or you have been in the Netherlands, then you'll most likely know from the branding which bank it is. So let's have a look, and I'll go to the big one. So the header. Which bank is this? This is definitely Rabobank, right? The main sponsor. Oh, no, sorry, okay. Anyways, what you can do with this kind of Storybook UI is that we can set up stories. And if I go into header, I have 3 stories. The first one is the default, which is like with a nice button, call to action, a header, and a breadcrumb. However, I can also do it without a button, or I can do it with only a title. And that's really convenient because my developers, they go to this docs and they say, okay, let me see how I actually will use this. This is the code. It's pretty readable up there. And they can just like play around with it, right? So if I only want to have this one, show the code. Oh, that's how it works. And if I get, where is that one? Stars, table, Lexbook, charts. So if I go to this one, we actually have a chart and we can put in numbers and we can just play with this real time. Okay, and let's put this on 250K. So this is very interactive. It's very easy for developers to use. So I like to use Storybook, but feel free to use anything. That's not really important for this presentation. Oh. So if we go back, there was a company which we don't know the name of. So Storybook is officially supported for React, Vue, Angular web components. However, most of the libraries also have a community support, like Ember, HTML, Svelte, React, Quick, Solid, and the list goes on. So if you would like to use Storybook, it actually works very simple, but it looks very complicated. And that's like a contradiction. So why is it simple? The component part on the left is actually your day-to-day components that you write in React or Angular or whatever you use. You can unit test it. Now this depends on like whether you like to do that or not. And we have a story. And the story is very easy to explain within React because it's a higher order component that drills down props into your component. So basically you're saying these are my arguments, which are props, and that will be sent into your component to test it. Now, I'm not a very theoretical person. I like to see things in practice. So we're going to get our feet wet. The first part is we'll create a button, and I use TypeScript myself, so I use some props on there, extend the HTML attributes for a button, and I put it inside my component with a button, props and children. Now, this is very easy. This is what we do every day. Now, let's look at the story. So this is a little bit more complex, and I could explain it like this, but I actually took the time to underline things, so I can actually say it more clearly. So the first part, if you're using TypeScript for Storybook, in the story, you need to reflect your component as a type. That's why we use the meta object for. Next up, we have a title. So just now I had like header button in the left navigation, and I had like a header and then the name of the navigation. You can go many levels deep. I don't know how far you can go with like nesting, but pretty much. And next up, we use the component where we actually say, hey, which HTML component are we going to put in there? In this case, a React component test button. Oh, I skipped that one. OK, so arguments are basically your props. And we'll have a look at this later, because it's a little bit easier to explain when you see it in action. Decorators are the things that you can wrap your component in. So basically, you can put HTML around it, or what's a lot better to use it for is for like providers, like routers, Redux providers, something like that. So there you can put anything around it. Last but not least, we need to have a type again. So we use the story object to type back to get it back as a type, and we export it as a default as a story. Let's actually look at this in action. So is this readable on the back? Good. All right. So what I did, I already made like branches because I can't code it out live. We don't have enough time for that. But for the first part, we have a button, which is exactly what we showed just now. It only has like some props and a button itself. If we go to the story, we here have our default export. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run Storybook, npm run Storybook. And that will take some time. So what it does, within our package.json, we have a port number here. So that's actually where you could change your port if you want to. All right. There it goes. And we now have test button. And within test button, we have a default. And that's the name that you actually exported. So if I would change the name of default in my story to be like primary, for example, here. Let me hide that. doesn't get my shortcut. OK. So if I would change this name into primary, and we would go back to the Storybook, yeah, OK, then it shows it here as primary. So that's basically how you can control the name. Now, this is a very boring button, and I can say here like, hello, Frontmania. That's how I can interact with it. But I want to give it some colors. So I use start components to do that. However, I'm not going to explain it fully, because it's a lot of code. Discard all files, no problem. All right, so what I did now within my story, I exported a second story. It's messing up, 1 second. OK, so my button stories. Now, it exported a second story, which is secondary. And I use a button type, which I actually enabled within my component with an enum called secondary. So what does this do? If we go to the button component itself, we first have an enum type. And for the default, we're going to render green. Now, I use start components, and I said, OK, if the button type equals to secondary, we're going to render it in yellow. So down here, we have a default type of primary. So by default, it's green. If you give a different button type to it, it will render in yellow. Let's have a look. Now this one comes because I changed the name. We have secondary button here, and we have the default button, which is green, right? So it's pretty easy to do. And we can play around with this inside of here. So I can also change it. And it will put everything in the query param. So that's how it basically gets saved. All right, so that's pretty easy, right? Last but not least, because I want to make a package on NPM, I have to export both my button and my button type's enum, so I can later import it. But we'll see that in 2 sections later. Next up, testing. Who does unit testing here? Raise your hand. Wow, nice. OK, cool. So I use, as I'm using React, I use React testing library to do it. And because I also used start components, I also had to use just start components. And the first thing I actually did, I wanted to test whether my prop spreading is working. So I give my button some attributes. And on the bottom, I assert, OK, does it actually get this attribute? Next up, I like to have coverage levels in it. And most of the people, they use Husky. And what is the most annoying thing when you use Husky? Sorry? Setting it up. That's also annoying, yeah, definitely. But also, when you have this developer that doesn't want to do that test, and, oh, I have 70% coverage. You know what? I use --no verify. Awesome, right? So now you have a code base that does not adhere to your coding standards. If you do it by setting it within your package JSON, the good thing actually is that if it now fails, in your pipeline will give an error. So your pipeline will not be able to build it. So they cannot bypass it by using no verify. Awesome. So I did a test by using that, and you can see within the slide that my index.tsx actually get tested, which I don't want. But on the bottom, we also see like, hey, your coding coverage, it's too low, error, right? So it errors out. We have to do 2 things to solve that. The first thing is I have to say in my jest.config.js, what are we actually going to test? And I could do this 2 ways. I could do it the inclusive way, so I could say like source/components, **/ everything. Or I can say like everything and I exclude what I don't want. And that's a personal preference, like you can play with it yourself. Next up, I want to test whether my button gets yellow. So by having the style rule on the bottom, I actually test it, and I'll show it in code in a moment. So let's have a look. So if we go to testing, no, not publish, testing. Because I zoomed in, like I really have like this clunky screen over here. So we go to our tests, and within here we actually see the just start components. Here, now I had to import, and we see the test itself, both of them. Now, if I'm going to run it, so I say new terminal, npm test. And then everything will pass, because I already make certain that it actually did. But we are going to make it broken, because that's more fun. Oh, it's really like, OK, so let me, can we see that way? OK, so everything is like 100 and one thing is 90, which is OK. If I disable this line now, disable, and I say save again, and I didn't run the watch mode, so I have to do it again. We can see, hey, there's an error. Your threshold has not been met because your branches were not tested successfully. So that's basically how we can mitigate people who use the no verify flag, which they should never do. All right, coming up next, we now have a basic package which is tested. So we're going to start to publish our package. Now, I have been a JavaScript developer for a long time, but when I was developing for about 3 years, I had no idea how to publish a package. I don't know whether that sounds familiar. So my first question is, who has published a package before? Well, that's quite a lot of people, so nice. So publishing, we're not going to use the CI/CD part yet. We're first going to check, can we actually publish a package? So to do that, we have to make a dist folder, right? So you have your building tools. There will be a dist folder. It will create a common.js and the ES module part, and it will be parsed. You don't technically need to do this step, run build, but to verify that it actually get built, you can use it. If you do an npm publish, it will also run this step. So you don't have to do it. Then if things get done correctly, this is basically your output. And then we have to say, OK, we want to log in into npm. Now, npm has 2 ways of logging in. I prefer the first one, the GUI. And that one comes with Node 18, I believe. And all the versions before were always like the terminal one. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So we go to branch number 4. I didn't make branch number 4 because there's nothing to do there. Let's see. What we'll do is I'll first delete this folder here, the dist folder, delete, and I'll run npm run build. We'll create it. So what we have in here is our component, button, plus all the maps. I'm using a trackpad, so it's not so easy, but all the maps like to do it to ES modules and to common.js. Next up, I want to use npm login. And it says press enter to enter the browser. Now, I don't really like to show you my passwords and this kind of thing, but this is the only password you actually can write down. I don't really care about it because it's a one-time password, but I do have to use my phone to get it. So luckily it's cooperating. 615599. Oh. 61559945. Let's go. Authentication is successful. So right now, if we go back to our coding editor, it actually says, hey, you have logged in. Now, if you publish a packet, that's not what I wanted to do. If you publish a package to npm, you have to have a unique name. Now, let's play a little questionnaire. Who thinks there are more than 1 million npm packages? Raise your hand. 2 million. It's like an auction, huh? 2.5 million. 3 million. Ha, you're wrong. It's 2.5 something. Anyways, you can see that within npm, there's 2.5 million packages. So getting a unique name is sometimes a bit of a mundane task. However, if you just prefix it with your own name or like the company you're working for or something like that, you usually can find something. But if I would say like, hey, let's go to the name. We're going to change this into React. I'm going to override React. I think that's fun. And I use npm publish. Let's see what it actually does. What will happen? No, let's hope not. Then somebody will come after me, I think. You get a 4 or 3 error. It's a little bit up because you're not a user that is allowed to push to the React repository. Now, the first time when I was doing this, like, hey, why do I get a for free? I didn't really get it. But if you make your name unique, usually it solved this kind of problem. So I had Rodney Storybook presentation. Should be pretty unique. So let's try it. And yesterday I also found a funny thing. Like if you have a repository or a package actually within NPM, you delete it and you want to repush it, you have to wait for 24 hours. You're not allowed to do that again. What does it say here? It still says I'm forbidden. OK. Now it should do it. Oh, here it actually is. So what it's telling me, you have deleted this, and you have to wait at least 24 hours to do that. OK, let's do that. I thought the timing would be enough. OK. Version 4, and I will remove the dash. But please remind me later if we get errors, I have to update this in the other branches as well. So npm publish. And now it should work. Ah, cool. So it actually updated it. If we go to npm, so around here, we go to the home page. We go to packages. This is secret, huh? You can't take pictures of this. Like all my packages? No way. Anyways, on the bottom, we have number 4. It has been published a few seconds ago. Come on. OK, and you should always either readme.md, right? And you should also customize it, not like I do it here. But anyways, it's version 0.1, and we can now actually start to consume this package. So if we go back to the PowerPoint, and we did this part, we also did that part, we also have a package, and it's there. So now we're going to look, how can we consume this package? So that's the right part of this. And I did not want to go through all the trouble of running Vite or create React app to make a React app, so I already made it just to save us some time. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going here and I'm going to copy this name. I'm going to copy the whole command, actually. Then, on the bottom, I'm going to open up this one. And within here, we have some basic code. Now, I'm first going to run my command. So this one will be updated to version 4. OK, and I'll do npm install, and then we go back to the PowerPoint. Then we don't have to wait. So we'll create a React application. We'll install the package. And what I basically want to do, I want to have like 2 buttons. The first one is a primary. The second one is a secondary button. And we'll import it from the package. And if that goes correctly, this is what we are going to see. So let's try. Now, which of the 2 was it? I think it was this one. Yes, presentation 4. So I will remove my import, because this is from version 3. That was what I did this morning to test it. And here we have test button. So because we use TypeScript, I can just do this. Bloop. And because I also exported my enum, I can also do that. So always export enums that you use. Then the only thing we have to do is say npm start. And that's a good time for me to actually get a drink. That's why you should use Vite. It's a bit faster. Voila, done. So this is like the manual part. And this is like what we do every day. But we like to automate things. We're developers. We're lazy. So setting up CI/CD. Who has worked with GitHub Actions before? Quite a lot. Azure DevOps. Circle CI. Travis. I think everybody's mixed. Cool. All right, so what we're going to do, we have 2 scripts that we actually have for a workflow, but we're only going to do one first, and that's the publishing of our package. So there's one thing that I tell you right now, which I always forget. You need to update your package version. I always forget it, so then I have to do it twice. So what do we have to do to get this working? The first part is we need to authenticate our CI pipeline to npm. And we do that by actually getting an access token. Next up, the access token, we need to store it within our Git repository, so I actually can use it. And then we need to have a GitHub action that can publish it. So the first thing is we can go to npm and get a token. And if you click your avatar, we have access tokens. Now, it became a little bit better than before. We have granular access tokens. I can say I only want to have read and writing permissions for this package, not for every package. And then you can set it up. And later we'll go for this through the GUI. Next up, you will get a secret. You will have to save it, because this is your only chance. If you do not save it, you have to get a new one. And let's actually do that. So if we go to npm, we go to access tokens. And then I have many, so I've done it quite a few times. Get granular access token. It needs a password. OK, sure. And what shall we call it? Anything? Frontmania. OK. I'll call it 2, because I might have used it before. And that would be like problematic. So I want to have a read and write package, and I want to do it only to one package. And the Git that I was using was called Storybook 4. Yeah, the package. Generate token. Do save this one. So not bad. And I actually noticed today that I'm one of the only Windows users, one of the few Windows users here. But with Windows 11, you actually now have tabs here. And that's awesome, right? And soon it will be like Notepad++, like if you shut down your computer, it will actually save it. So that's really nice. I'm happy. So next up, what we're going to do, we're going to store this token within Git itself. So if we go back to Git, did I have it open yet? No, I didn't open it yet. OK. So if we go to Git, and we go to our repositories, we go to React Storybook presentation, and within here I can say settings. They have a section called secrets and variables, and this one is specifically for actions. And within that I'm going to create a new repository secret, and I've done this many times, so I can just double click npm publish token. That's a token. And we add a secret. So now we have most of the stuff done, but we still need to create a pipeline. So let's go through this. This will be our pipeline, and I'm going to explain it within the IDE, because I think that's easier to highlight things. So we go to, I first have to shut this one down, otherwise every time it's coming up. So let's go to version number 5. Where's 5? Oh, here you are. You went up. Force checkout. Discard one file, no problem. And the first thing I need to do is update this version to number 4. Otherwise, we get a problem. And then within GitHub workflows, we actually have this GitHub action. Let me close this down. So what I'm doing, I give it a name called Storybook CI/CD. And within that, I say if you go to master or main, this is also like controversial. And if you push to branch number 5, because I want to demo this without a pull request. We're running on Ubuntu. We use a checkout for our repository. Then I want to have Node version 18 installed. Next up, I want to do my unit tests. I want to have a coverage report. And we will use a publish to npm with a token. So if we just save this, and we are going to update it, and I could just call it update. Please give better commit messages than I do. All right. And then let's actually see whether it starts building in actions. OK, so this is running. So then we'll just go through the PowerPoint, because otherwise I'll waste time. I ask for a coverage report. So on the bottom, I actually get an artifact here, which I can download, and I get the coverage report. If I unzip it, then you actually have a thing like this. It lists all your components. You can click into it, and it will tell you like which line has not been covered. So usually if you use something like a package called Istanbul or Liskov, you'll get this, this kind of functionality. If it goes wrong, my CI/CD pipeline will fail because you did not reach the 80% benchmark. So let's see what it actually finished. Now, that's always It's very risky to do a presentation with CI/CD in it, because you always have to wait. Ah, cool, it's done. Almost done. And it usually takes about a minute. Come on, you can do it. Yeah, done. Okay, so this is my publish. These are all my warnings that I have to do. I have to update my script someday. And we have a coverage report, which you can download there. So if we go back, we can now actually start to set up Docker. And Docker is a really big topic. I don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but we are going to see it in action. So my biggest question is, who used Docker before? Raise hands. I don't have to explain anything. It's cool. Nice. So the first thing is like, how does Docker work? You actually create an image, and the image is a set of instructions to create a container. And within that container, you actually have the smallest, well, it depends how you build it, but you aim to have the smallest possible operating system and packages to actually run your application. So you have a very small attack surface. You don't have a huge operating system around it, but it does add some complexity. So we'll first create an image. That image is, I can create 100 containers without a problem. It will always be idempotent, so it will always be the same. And with that, we can actually push it to a repository, which can be Docker Hub or like Azure Container Registry. So, to do that, I do need to have the web server, and it's totally not related to this. I use Nginx, and the only thing I'm saying here, look for index.html, open up course, and parse all these media items. That's all I'm going to say about it. So our Docker file itself, to actually build it, what we're going to say, we're going to have a working directory, which I say is app. I could just say copy ... so copy everything from my source to my destination. But maybe I'm autistic or something. I just like to see like what I'm copying. So I actually know for certain those files are there. And then I say npm remove node modules. So I remove all my node modules because it might be that it's not up to date yet. And then I'll actually install everything. And I use the force because sometimes you have, what's it called? Legacy peer dependencies. If you use force, it will ignore them, update it, and if you're lucky, it works. If you're unlucky, you have to update it yourself. Tough luck. And I run build Storybook. And that actually creates a folder called a Storybook static, which contains our Storybook application. So to host it, I will use Alpine from Nginx, and that's actually the smallest version. I check where the builder is done. I copy over, I copy over my Storybook static into my share of Nginx, HTML. We copy in the configuration file, and we have a startup file and a chmod to give the permissions. Now, we're not going too deep into this, but that's how it works. This is my startup file. I usually do variable interpolation in it as well, but to keep it easy, you need to use this, what they call shebang, I'm not certain, just to tell like Linux, like this is a script, but it's not Bash, so please interpret it with a code interpreter, but not Bash. So let's actually get that up and running. So if we go here, to version number 6, we get a Docker file. So first we have Nginx. This is the configuration file in here. Then we have Docker. This is a Docker file, which is in here. And then I can actually say Docker build current directory tag. So which name do I want to give it? And I call it try out Frontmania image. This takes a while, so I'll first go through. Can't find the file specified. I'm not running Docker desktop, I think. No daemon, so okay. Did it start? No, it's starting up. So I still want to do the same thing. I want to make an image. Let's get that started. Okay, so while it's doing that, I will still go back to my PowerPoint. We will get an image, and that image we can actually make containers with. And if everything goes properly, we will actually get this one, but then running on our Docker container. Now, Docker is always very slow, and we are 11 minutes, so I have to hurry a bit. I will get this, but it will first go to Azure Container Registries. So if you have to publish to a registry, you can use many different kind of things. Most famous, DocHub, Azure Container Registry. And I actually prefer Azure because that way my package is private. Nobody has access to my container registry. Well, if I go to Docker Hub, unless I pay for it, I think it's $7 a month, everybody can access it, right? So that's why I did that. So if we go to Azure, we will first set up a container registry. And within Azure, we have something called resource groups, which are like a logical container where I will put a registry in. Once we have that, we will have to enable credentials to actually publish to this registry. And you have to turn it on, like here, admin user, then you get your name, password, etc. And if we do that, we can actually do it. So let's first go back. Docker, come on, you can do that faster. Then we'll first go to the part of Azure. So within here, I will create a new container registry. Connection error, oh, interesting. Okay, container registry. And within there, we say create. No, that's not what I wanted. Container registry, create. Okay. So we give it a resource group, which is my private resource group, of course. I'm not a Pythoneer. So let's call this Frontmania ACR. And we want it in West Europe. And this is very cunning. This will cost you $40 a month. If you put it on basic, it's basically free as you go until 10 gigs. So you put it on basic. Okay, we can create this, and now Docker should also be done. So this one is creating. Okay, cool. So if we go to Docker, that's you. And we have an image. Try out Frontmania image, and we say, okay, let's run it. I want it to be a Frontmania container, and we host it on port 80. Run. And if I go to it, like browse to it on my local host, I will get the same thing. Okay, so this is the first step. We now have our documentation in a container. The good thing is that we already set up the container registry. So the next steps that we have to do is we have to create a workflow within GitHub Actions to select an operating system. We get a date variable for retention of all the versions. I will show this in practice. It's a little bit hard to explain, but if you update your Docker, it will always update latest. Now, if I make a bug today and my customer goes down, I can't go back to like the day before yesterday. So if I actually save two images, one with a prefix of a date and one with the latest, I can go back in history. And I'll show this in action. And the last one is we need to actually publish it to the container registry. Okay, so I try to keep it easy. First one, push to Azure Container Registry task. We run on Ubuntu. We do a publish, and we only publish if the first task from the publish succeeded. So if my npm package script fails, we're not going to do this. We're going to error out. Next, we're going to get the date. Not interesting. And then we are going to publish it to the container registry. And here I actually do a few things. We have the Docker login action. You get all your credentials in. And then we have a build script, which basically puts the date there. We rename the one with the date to latest, and we push both of them. All right, so let's go there. First things first, we need to go to number 7, which is the last one. You're almost done with me today. Let's go. Did I get to 7? Yeah, I did. And within there, we now have our workflow, which contains this second task, right? And I'm not going to change stuff in here because last time I did the presentation, I changed the names and everything didn't work anymore. I had to like decode. We don't have the time for that. So I'm just going to push it with the name Lisify. And let's actually, sorry? Hey, that's a very good one, thank you. So if we go down, and we go from 3 to 4, we save it. And the first thing we actually need to do is, once it has created our ACR registry, we need to get the password and the server itself. So we go to access keys. We say, OK, I want to publish it. Now I get a few things here. So I'm going to my favorite notepad. We put it in here, 1. We put the name of the server in here, 2. And we put a password in here. And you can save this password if you can remember it, no problem, because I'll delete it later. So let's go back to GitHub Actions. And the first thing that we actually need to do is to go to the settings, go into secrets and that one, new variable. And the first thing is we need to have the server name. So the server name was this one on Azure.io. Next up, we're going to do the username, which is the same, but then without Azure.io. So I don't have a mouse. I'm pretty slow this way. And the last one is the password. So if we go here, password, add secret. All right, cool. So now I can publish this one, and it will do everything. There's one thing we forgot. What was that? Version number. Yeah, exactly. I'll put it to 6. Then I'm certain that I didn't do anything before that update. Commit, push. Now it will update my npm package. It will get everything to Azure, to the container registry, and we will have it live on the Azure web app after that. So let's see what it's actually going to start building. So if we go to the actions, it starts to do an update. And I use update and update. So this takes a little while. So we go to this one. I have 4 minutes left. Ooh. No, not that one, the other one. Where is it? Where's my presentation? Here. So once we did that part, we actually get, within our registries, we get a folder where it actually stores our images. And then we can say on the image, on the latest, deploy to web app. And then it will run automatically. But what's very nice about Azure these days, it will also create a script that will automatically have a webhook checking, hey, is there a new version? Is there a new version? So your CD is automatically set up as well. So as it's still building, I will show you what I promised before in my other repository. Because I want to have the version number so we can roll back later. So if I go to this one, my private one, we go to repositories, we go into the API. You can see that I actually have different versions. And if I want to roll back, I can just use one of those version numbers without actually having problems of rolling back. And if you look at the other ones, I don't have that. And that's why, because within Azure, you pay for the data that you use. You have 10 gig, which is free, so I try to keep it empty, so I don't always have to pay for it. Then we get into the update. So the publish has been done. If we go to npm, and we go to our packages, and then presentation 4, it's version 6.0, updated a few seconds ago. So that worked. That's the first part. Now, then we go back to this one. Where did it go to? It's always Docker, always. So we have to wait on this one. Like, do you, anybody want to play a game or something? Huh? Where is it? It's almost done. It only has to go to 100%, then publish it. Awesome. 92. And meanwhile, I'll go to repositories here. I'll close up this one. Go there. Go to the update. It's pushed. OK, it's done. OK, done. Nice. So if we go here, we now get a refresh. We have Storybook. And we have an older version and the latest. On the latest, I say, OK, what I want to do is deploy to web app. I call this Frontmania 2023. And I will say Linux. And now I have to select my plan. So this is basically like what kind of web app do you want to have. And the bigger you take, the more expensive it will be. And I'll create it on Linux. OK. So we'll set it up. And it will have to do some work. So I'll first finish up. So what we've done today, and I will show you the working version, but it has to take some time. So we created a Storybook application with React.js. We used GitHub Actions to publish a package to npm. We created an application that consumed the package. We containerized the Storybook application by using Docker. We use GitHub Actions to push the image to ACR, and we have a CD running on Azure itself. All right, so, and that all within the time. No, 1 minute late. Ah. All right, browse. And this also takes time, but a few seconds, because it's a very cheap plan. I'm Dutch, huh? So. Ah, nice. So it's working. And that is on Azure. This is the URL for Mania 2023. So that's it. Thank you for attending this presentation.